His Excellency the Governor-General of Antigua and Barbuda, Sir Rodney Williams, the Honorable Gaston Brown, Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, my dear brother and friend, Prime Minister, honorable members of Cabinet, members of Parliament, members of the Diplomatic Corps, if the Leader of the Opposition is here, I'm not sure, Canon Reed Simon and other members of the clergy, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the people of Williams, to his children, his family, loved ones, friends and fans in Antigua and Barbuda, Caribbean and internationally, I extend my deepest condolences for the loss of this cultural titan, Caribbean musical ambassador, a national and regional treasure, a respected and celebrated grandmaster of the calypso and soca art form, the legend, Sir Rupert, the mighty Swallow Philo. It was George Washington Carver, the great African-American educator, scientist, and inventor, who said, and I quote, "When you do the common things in life in an uncommon way, you will command the attention of the world," end of quote. Sir Rupert not only achieved that, but he was a trailblazer, fondly called the mighty swallow, King Swallow, the birdie, the gajo, high-flying soldier, the cancer man, and to this day, king. From a humble beginning to a household name at home and abroad, to international stardom, achieving world recognition and fame for himself, but more pleasing to him for his twin island nation. Apart from the ceremonial knighthood at home, the social benefits that have been accorded him by the state, to reflect the standard and quality of life he was deserving of from the land he loved so dear, and gave his creative all, and represented in an acknowledged and phenomenal way he never received. He lived and died the experience of societal ingratitude, with the unkindest cut of hollow mockery for one who gave so much to so many and for so long, and so selflessly, and in the grandest of ways. The mischievous may ask, and so too the innocent inquirer, why is Asot Michael the one delivering the eulogy this morning? Is it because he's a parliamentarian or a former minister of government? No. For clarity and elucidation, Sir Rupert King Swallow Philo and his entire family man and mine have been inextricably twinned from time immemorial. His late sister Algita grew up with my mother and father from the birth of my first sister Teresa Ann in the early 1960s when she came to work with us. She was part of our family for over 30 years. She was more than a cook or a domestic helper. She was a sister to my mom and a second mother to Teresa Ann and to all of us. It may be a forgotten fact, but one this moment requires revisiting to place me in the context of being here and to perform this sad and painful task to a loving and long life lost friend. And I thank the entire Philo family for giving me such a distinguished honor and privilege. I was one of a very select few privileged to listen to his unfinished and unmastered compositions. And when Sir Rupert King Swallow would land in Antigua with the finished first press LP 33 or 45 from Charlie's studio in New York City, Fulton Street, Brooklyn to be exact, his very first stop would be the Patrick A. Michael department store on High Street, where the monster speaker boxes were outside on the sidewalk in front of the store, and the turntable at the ready to blare out Swallow's new release. DJ Patrick would send the sweet music, lyrics, rhythm, melodies, and tempo blaring and blasting in deafening decibels. And the dancing crowds would gather emptying the Golden Peanut and Brother B's restaurants. I remember the frantic phone calls from Ivor Bird. Swallow has a red hot new release, and big bad ZDK Radio does not have a copy. So my late father would ensure that ZDK had the new hit to be aired the very same day. Yes, Patrick Michael's store on High Street was where King Swallow songs would first be released before the radio stations. I also recall on every single Juve morning that Swallow and his band performed on my father's float. When his loud cry paced the midnight hour to announce his arrival on planet Earth, On Valentine's Day 1942, the midwife immediately proclaimed, "This bouncing baby is going to be a singer." And what a singer he turned out to be. King Swallow, Sir Rupert Wilston Valentine Philo, one of the most loved composers and performers of calypso as the world has ever known. 78 years later, the good and faithful servant is being called home to rest. As loving and humble as he was born in the trash house by the St. Bartholomew Church in Willowkeys, rich in the quality of his life than any millionaire, more loved than any big-time celebrity, and more respected than any politician. A few days after his birth, his grandmother Mathilda went to town, to Mr. Michael in town, and asked if he had any cot, because her grandson born and sleeping space was tight. When she got the cot, the other siblings couldn't touch it, or it would be 6 lashes each. So the other siblings stood by and watched their brother, Sir Rupert Philo, was christened and he was confirmed at the St. Stephen's Anglican Church. As a child, he attended the St. Bart's School and helped on the farm tending to the animals, especially his donkey, Dandy Ball, that he was particularly fond of. His childhood companions were O'Neill Joseph, Robin Yearwood, Cordell Daniel, Bentley Cornelius, Edmund Cornelius, the late Jerome, and Dr. Prince Ramsey. He attended the Goodwill Academy and made friends with James Stanley Rose, Clarence Crump, MP Cutie Benjamin, and many more. After leaving school, he taught at the Goodwill Academy, which is known as Henry School, and with the help of Mr. V.C. Bird, he learned the trade of carpentry at Mill Reef Club, who sent him there. He served in the Antigua and Barbuda Defense Force. He went back to the books and passed his Cambridge exams with flying colors. He worked in the airline industry. He spoke Spanish and French. He was a Sunday school teacher and an acolyte at the St. Stephen's Anglican Church. Sir Rupert Philo met his love of 55 years at the AYPA meeting at St. Bartholomew in Willowkeys. They produced 2 children, Shanette and Derry Philo. He would always travel abroad, but nevertheless would always return home to Lorna and Edith. They had their ups and downs, ins and outs, but the relationship was there. She would also travel with him abroad or just accompany him on shows. Nothing was too good for his Edith and the kids. In fact, his song Lorraine was dedicated to her. After he wrote it, he told her, "This one is for you." When he took sick, she visited him at his home in Gambles. He told her he wanted to come back home to Willowkeys. "I'm not staying here all the days of my life." Her reply to him, "But you are home." He says, "I am not staying here. I want to come home with you." And so he went home to Willowkeys and was cared for by his daughters and Lornette Edith Thomas, who was by his side until he passed. The father of 7, Wayne, Shanette, Randy, Derry, Kevin, Rainey, and White. Sir Rupert was the 5th of 11 children and the first of 4 boys born to Zachariah and Modestina Philo. He loved his siblings. He laid down his life for his children. He adored his grandchildren. He was the little prince to his sisters, Hildred Thomas Carlos, Rosa Philo Baltimore, Eugenie Philo Coates, the late Algeta Philo, Sylvanie Philo Henry, Valerie Philo Barton, and Hillarine Philo. He was the proud, protective big brother to Glenna Philo, Vernon Philo, Shelley Philo, and Terence Philo. Sir Rupert was a kind, gentle soul who grew up shining the light of love through the changing scenes of life and giving a helping hand to family, relatives, neighbors, friends, and people in need. He rode the tensions of success and failure, thirsty for truth in fear of God, and strengthened in the conviction that the flame of his little candle will always be powerful enough to dispel the darkness of evil and negativity. A wonderful husband, father, grandfather, brother, and friend. We give thanks and praise for the blessings of his life, for the bright soul that rejoiced in musical creations to bring us joy, peace, and perspective. His musical journey began with singing in church, at school concerts, and learning to play the keyboard. Then one day, Sir Rupert's longtime school friend, Jerome Ramsey, whose sister Amy, paid him his first 25 cents to sing a calypso. A quart she paid him. She said to him that he could make money like the mighty sparrow, because he was always singing the songs of Calypso Maestro. A sparrow is a bird, Ramsey said, and there's also a bird called swallow. They both laughed. Unknown to them at that time, they had just initiated a giant of the Calypso art form with the stage name Swallow. He worked at Liat for at least 2 years, from 1974 to 76. Swallow then decided to turn his love of music into a full-time career. Terminated from one job, and with a choice between the airline industry and carpentry, Swallow picked up the microphone and entered his soca kingdom, convinced that he could survive in the entertainment arena. Teenager Swallow entered the Calypso competing ring in 1961 and immediately gave birth to the political Calypso in this country with a song about the Dominican Republic dictator Rafael Trujillo and his oppressive treatment of migrant workers from Antigua and Barbuda. He slammed Trujillo as a wicked man who forced migrant workers to put every single cent in the tyrant's hand before they could leave the land. A four-time Calypso king, Swallow first took the crown in 1973 with March for Freedom and Push Here, Push Day. He won again in 1977 with One Hope, One Love, One Destiny, and repeated in 1978 with Dawn of a New Day, one of the greatest social commentaries in Antigua and Barbuda Calypso history. After 6 years seeing the monarchy land the hands of his rivals, King Swallow rode back to the top spot for the final time in 1985 with Town Mashdown. Through the years, his competitive nature coupled with the unwavering support of the followers from the East forged a legendary rivalry with the other two internationally recognized champions of Antigua and Barbuda Calypso, King Shortshirt, the Monarch, and King Obstinate. Their titanic contest fueled his growth, sharpened his competitive edge, drew some of the largest crowds at Carnival City for any Calypso competition of the day or subsequently. Without a doubt, that rivalry was not only responsible for establishing the highest standards of Calypso competitions in the region, but for making Antigua's Carnival one of the most sought-after global carnival events and one of the greatest summer festivals anywhere. But Swallow, he credits those moments as some of the most satisfying and inspiring in his career. But he created an even greater legacy in conjunction with Calypso colleagues and sponsors by hosting Antigua's oldest and most consistent Calypso and cultural entertainment institution, Swallow's Calypso Pepper Pot, the University of Calypso and Soca. It was the greatest Calypso institution ever in the history of Antigua and Barbuda, which was the incubator nursery for Calypso and Calypsonians. Swallow's genius as a composer and performer of classic Calypso party music won 5 road march titles and made him the very first Calypsonian to grace the stage at Radio City Music Hall in New York. Dubbed the king of the annual Labor Day Street Jam in Brooklyn, the pride and joy of Willie Keys is still the reigning Caribbean Calypso king. The impact of his irresistible soca and Calypso music was arguably bigger abroad than it was here at home in Antigua. Indeed, several Trinidad and Tobago soca stars, grateful for the value of his contribution, in the Mecca of the art form have paid glowing tributes to the Gajo, a real boss in the soca kingdom. He was a complete Calypso and soca artist, more complete than most, a great writer and melody maker, a commanding and imposing stage presence, a master delivering and commanding crowd response. In competitions, he was spellbinding with his social commentary, and was almost a certainty that Sir Rupert King Swallow's sartorial elegance was going to be pleasingly imposing. His was a visually striking, impactful, and captivating attire. What a compelling fusion of artist's sartorial elegance, command of the stage, a master of delivering his songs. The party rocker, the one who always ignites the spirit of the dance hall with his sweet melodies and jumpy rhythms, while on the road his music is sure to mash downtown. He was a great creative and imaginative lyricist, a dynamic composer who was able almost to fuse his creative lyrics with almost incomparable, consistently sweet and captivating melody, making the people want to wine on something and whole night in the fete, on the way to and from the fete in the back seat. Having penned the lyrics for most of his songs, Swallow lent his composition skills to the Department of Culture and the Carnival Committee. This musical pioneer has made promotions through music his mission. Swallow's inspiration has always been fueled by his love for Calypso, Carnival, and ultimately his beloved Antigua and Barbuda. He received a knighthood, the Grand Cross of Princely Heritage, along with the Order of Merit in Antigua and Barbuda. His long record of recognition also includes numerous accolades from Trinidad and Tobago, Grenada, and the United States, where he received an award from Senate Majority Leader Dean G. Scullis, and a most prestigious induction into the Sunshine Awards Hall of Fame. As much there was fire in the back seat of the subway jam with Satan coming down and fans screaming, "Don't stop the party." The use of a superpower's launch of a satellite in space to fill the galaxy with witty lyrics, haunting melody and compelling rhythm, lives with us as arguably one of his finest works. Uncle Sam sent up some men on a space mission. In his crew was Sally Wright, the first space woman. The mission was to plant some satellite up in space, so the challenge would take off from Canaveral in a haze. But before the mission could be accomplished, the whole of orbit, like now, was foreign music. The astronaut in them was feeling to party, so they turned the mission into a space party. Everybody happy, jumping and down in the party, wheeling up their body, everyone enjoying the party. Fire, 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 the galaxy's on fire. Sir Rupert fell ill in August of 2017, just about the time when he usually traveled to New York for Labor Day. He would usually call his children to let them know he had arrived in New York and was safe. After realizing he didn't call, his eldest daughter took it upon herself to call. And after calls went unanswered, she got worried and then decided to call Mr. Ralston Charles, his manager, who advised her to get to New York immediately. She gave up her job to be at her dad's side. After Sir Rupert was released, it was months of being back and forth for follow-ups, both dad and daughter hitting the streets, heading to Kings County Hospital. Swallow was known all around, even to the nurses from around the Caribbean, knew who he was as they came into his hospital room with cell phones playing his songs on YouTubes. As the days went by and he started looking gloomy, he would remind his children to look to God and always pray. In his own words, and I quote, "Do not be afraid to call on God. Talk to him like you talk to me. Ask for what you want. God is there for you." The girls would get a good scolding, but for the boys, he always wanted to know if they were all right because he doesn't have time with WhatsApp and Facebook. But he loved all his children. He would always mention his handbag, Shanette. In his last week in the hospital, he would always cry when his daughters arrived and mentioned about going home. He never wanted them to leave or leave without him. He would hold his daughters' hands and told them how much he loved them, and to tell their mom how much he loved her, and he's coming home soon, and to be safe on the road. In his final days as the exemplary musical astronaut prepared for liftoff to the heavenly space, he reminded his children of their upbringing as Christians, of good conscience, focus on the priorities of Matthew 25. Help your brother, help your sister, help your neighbor, food for the hungry, water for the thirsty, shelter for the stranger, care for the sick, clothes for the needy, comfort for the heavily burdened. If I was hungry and you gave me something to eat, I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink, I was a stranger and you invited me in. I needed clothes and you clothed me. I was sick and you looked after me. I was in prison and you came to visit me. Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you?" The king will reply, "I tell you the truth. Whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers of mine, you did for me." He urges children to live God's word, look to him, and keep praying. Sir Rupert Wilston Valentine Philo, an exemplary family man, was born to greatness. He was blessed with the talent of music and the capacity for love in human beings and kindness. There were times when he questioned why man to man is so unjust and struggled with the difficulties over who to trust. Excuse me. There were times when he questioned why man to man is so unjust and struggled with the difficulties over who to trust.
It's below you. Below you.
I'm sorry. Indeed, there were times when the injustice for this rock-solid support of the Antigua and Barbuda Labour Party was brutal. even from his own comrades of Labour Party, while we blindfolded ourselves in the sound of silence. We were there singing along with Swallow, VC 50 years at the wheel. And if you can't run the country, give it to the Labour Party. We were there when Swallow voted for the Labour Party in every election until he could vote no more. We were there when Swallow religiously joined Labour Party pickets and marches against the George Walter and Baldwin Spence administrations. But were you there when political victimization by those he criticized brought him to his knees? Were you there when the broken promises from the party he steadfastly supported deprived him of just compensation for government's acquisition of the property on which an entertainment center on East Street and Independence Avenue was built from his sweat and his toil back in 2001 when we made a cabinet decision to compensate him? Were you there when this quintessential national treasure was being shamed and served with one humiliation after another? In his unending efforts to gain partnership rights to Woodbury Park property on Old Palm Road, as he sought to establish a public entertainment and cultural pepper pot center? Were you there when he refused the offer of his dear friend Winston Gypsy Peters' offer, who was then Trinidad and Tobago's Minister of Arts and Culture, to have the Trinidad and Tobago government sponsor and host his 50th anniversary celebrations, because he felt this historic event was for the people of Antigua and Barbuda? Were you there when, because of that patriotic and nationalistic love and commitment to his nation and his people, he personally bore a great deal of those expenses for that event, which left him in debts up to his neck, allowing for mean-spiritedness, envy, and jealousy to take its course in his prosecution, accompanied by the greatest humiliation of his life? That this national treasure, this Caribbean cultural icon and ambassador, was ordered to be held in a public cell in St. John City? Were you there? Were you there as he wept, as his heart bled, as his pride was imprisoned with accused and hardened criminals? Were you there when the state should have assumed the full cost and expense for hosting his 50th career anniversary celebrations, so that he would not have had any responsibility for goods and services? Were you there? We owe him so much, not only for the international publicity he gave to this nation, but also for the joy, the happiness, the entertainment, the economic and financial benefits that his life work bestowed on Antigua and Barbuda. So today, as our nation and the Calypso world stand in honor of the life and times of Sir Rupert King Swallow, let us do now what we did not do for this great national icon and Caribbean cultural ambassador's priceless contributions to this nation when he was alive. Mr. Honorable Prime Minister, members of Cabinet, in honor of his memory, let us agree to settle all the outstanding debts which was no fault of yours and was prior to your time. But all debts owed to him by the government, because government is continuous, so that his children can derive the benefit of his legacy that he did not receive, but should have. Let us all agree to the erection of a life-size statue of Sir Rupert at the entrance of Willikies Village. Go in peace and righteousness, my friend, my brother, Sir Rupert King Swallow Philo, a classical and grandmaster exponent of the Calypso and soca art forms, a most distinguished national, regional, and international ambassador you were. You gave the best of yourself for the enjoyment of all of us. We are eternally grateful to you. May you find your place and peace in glory land. Somewhere up there, in the melodious voice of a king, we hear the words, "Come, you are blessed by my Father. Take inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. May flight of angels sing him to the eternal party in space, in the heavens above. May his soul rest in peace. Farewell, Swallow. Farewell." Thank you.